Thanks for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. And I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to wellness.
Many of us have jobs that require us to work in an area where we're exposed to other people's habits and foolery and a lot of other things, but we'll just stick with people's habits, specifically their drug habits. So for instance, if you're a police officer or you're a mail carrier, you're gonna be exposed to other people's like drug smoke and whatever residue is left in the air from someone else's actions. Also, in the United States, shaking hands is a very popular way of embracing a person and saying, "What's up? Nice to meet you," or "Ain't seen you in a long time, my brother." And both times, you are essentially putting yourself in a space where, and you don't have control over this unless you just don't shake people's hands, or you like that girl off that one show where she wear gloves everywhere because when she touch people, she can see their past. But, okay, where are we? Either way it goes, you don't have control over what other people are doing. And you are then exposing yourselves to maybe drugs that they were doing in the past. And this can end up affecting people in a very bad way. There was a study that did hair tests on police officers, both black and white officers, and the black officers tested positive 4 times more than the white officers. Now, with somebody sitting out there, and please dismiss yourself if you are one of those people who are like, well, the black officers just probably was doing the drugs. Well, no. Matter of fact, that was not the case. This actually has happened where a police officer was found to have drugs in his hair sample, and he ended up suing the whoever you sue. I forgot, but he sued because it was a false positive, and it was pretty much like a discrimination case. I don't know what the results were, but there are studies that support that he was being discriminated against. Now, let me tell you, today I'm going to give you a whole new reason to say, don't touch my hair. There is a whole area of knowledge regarding hair contaminants being a problem, causing false positives in hair testing. Companies that do these testings adhere to some like decontamination method, which involves taking some sort of chemical onto dry hair to kind of like clean the drug off of the outside of the hair that may be like on the surface, but that's essentially it. There are countless studies that show that these decontamination methods are ineffective in a lot of cases. For example, there are times where drugs can penetrate the hair. So in the case where, like, if you're a woman who walks out with wet hair, if your hair is wet and you just so happen to walk through someone's cloud of smoke, when the hair is wet, it's kind of open and it allows for the intake of drugs. Another thing that was found is that drugs are more likely to be absorbed by hair that is darker than hair that is lighter. So in the case if you have dark black hair, your hair is going to absorb some type of drug chemical into it versus someone who has blonde hair. And lab decontamination has been found to be ineffective for long-term decontamination. So what that means is if you just got exposed to the drugs, like, you walk through someone else's cloud of smoke right before you go get your testing, it is more likely that you will be able to get whatever drugs where your hair was exposed to, it will come off of the hair. But in cases where it is absorbed into the hair, so not just on the surface, but it's actually inside of the hair, lab decontamination methods just don't work. There was a study that was done on Asian hair that showed that exposure to PCP can contaminate the hair from the environment, and that decontamination methods do not help with passing a hair drug test because it exceeds the cutoff limit. So the main study that I will be talking about today was a study done where they tested the contents of cocaine and methamphetamine contamination in hair after the hair had been exposed to black hair products. So they used some of the OGs of the hair products. They wasn't lacking in that department, okay? So they used a petroleum jelly-like product. So y'all remember when you used to get your hair braided and you used to use the blue gel, or the blue grease, the blue magic? They used that. That was their petroleum jelly hair product that they tested. They also tested hair products that contained oil and humectant, such as the BB oil moisturizing lotion. You remember the one that's kind of similar to the pink oil lotion, but it was the white bottle, not the pink bottle. But the one that they used was with the castor oil and aloe. And they also tested the ISO Plus styling gel. Don't act brand new because you've been using Eco Styler for the past little 2-3 years. The ISO Plus is the one that we used to use, and it had your edge is all crusty and, white. Yeah, that one. It's right by the Eco Styler gel. Don't act brand new. What they knew was that the petroleum jelly product does not have any water, but the BB moisture lotion and the gel both have water as their first ingredient, so very high water content. The BB also had a humectant in it, chemical that allows for the hair to absorb moisture from the environment. And that's something that is mainly found in black hair products because it allows for our hair to keep from drying out. Gel can extract drugs from the environment. Essentially what happens is so it's like the drug is in the air, which is essentially a chemical. It sticks onto the gel, which is on your hair, and it stays there, and it can literally just be holding on to the drug until you go through and you just go and you combing your hair through. Now it's drugs all in your hair. And when you wash it, the drug doesn't necessarily have to wash out. It can be absorbed by the hair. So this study was meant to simulate a speck of drugs or drugs being smoked in the area being attracted to the hair with products on it, and then later being combed out. They tested 3 types of hair, white, Asian, and black hair, to see if there was a difference in the absorption of drugs into the hair, and to see if the decontamination methods worked with extracting the drugs from the environment out of the hair. They rubbed both drugs on the hair, which already had the hair product on it, used the decontamination method, just a standard method. And one thing I thought was interesting was that black hair is actually not more susceptible to contamination than white and Asian hair. And from what I remember from reading some papers before, I think that has something to do with the fact that black hair does not expand as much as white hair and Asian hair when wet. So maybe that's it. Although this study attempted to not use methods where the hair was dampened or anything. And they did another study where they mixed the drugs and the hair products together, and they found that even after using the decontamination method, the amount of drugs in the hair exceeded the limit, so the cutoff limit before they tell you was doing drugs, by 10,000 times. Now let me remind you that this hair was not from people who actually consumed these drugs. What they found was that when using gel and the BB moisturizer, the hair contamination exceeded the cutoff limit by 1,000 times in all hair types. Essentially saying that there are some hair products that can bathe the drugs. Drugs can just literally sit in that hair product. Any hair care product that is used to hydrate hair is expected to have this same effect. And this tends to be the type of hair products that Black women use. Because we are the ones that tend to use these products more often, that may be why there are more false positive results amongst Black people. Now, what the paper said is that it's not a racial bias. It is actually a cultural bias. So they wanted to point that out because in the past it was thought that maybe that the drug tests were more racially biased, which would mean that like Black hair is more likely to absorb drugs, but that wasn't found. But it's actually the fact that we use different products and that's part of our culture. So it's actually not a racial bias, it's a cultural bias. And that's kind of what I want to leave you with, is the fact that there are cultural biases in hair drug testing. There are a lot of companies that are trying to step away from doing hair testing because of this exact reason, but still so many companies are doing these hair tests, and there are companies that are doing these drug tests that don't have the most efficient means of extracting drugs out of the hair. And we want to just be aware of these things because we're going out trying to get jobs, and we should know about these different tests so that we can be more enlightened and able to say, like, actually with confidence, like, no, that was a bias and that this is not a representation of anything related to me. This is just because I was exposed to blah, blah, blah. With that, I want to leave you with one thought that is completely unrelated to drug testing, but just something to marinate on. So I recently came up with this concept, and I asked myself this, so I wanted to share it with you. If you only had $5,000 to live off of for a year, how would you spend it? How would you allocate it? And how would you disperse your money? I just want you to marinate on that. I think that when we think about only having $5,000, we really learn how to make things stretch and figure it out. Now, I want to ask you the same thing with regards to time. We only roughly get 5,000 hours per year to live. And I ask you the same question. How do you allocate your time? Now we get actually like 8,600, but after you eliminate sleep, because sleep is essential, so you take out that third of your life just to dedicate to sleep, you have about 5,000 hours left, okay? And I ask you, what do you do with that remaining time? And I want us to remember that money is unlimited. There is always more money to be made. Get a second job, a third job, but we can always make more money. What we cannot do is make more time.
If you want to reach me, I am at The Research Her on the socials. You can also go to theresearchher.com, shoot some reviews and ratings, and until next time, I holla.